Hi everyone, we're Mimicker, here to introduce all kinds of knowledge, even the stuff we didn't know about.
It is good to be here. We have quite the stack of documents to get through today.
We really do. You know, when we talk about government agencies, it can sometimes feel a little dry, alphabet soup, bureaucracy.
Right.
But this topic is different. It's one of those things where the headline sounds standard something about border enforcement, but when you actually peel back the layers, you find the ground has just completely shifted.
Without anyone really noticing.
Exactly. We are looking at the 20-year evolution of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ACE. And look, before you think, oh, I know this, it's about the border, let me stop you, because the sources we have suggest this isn't really about the border anymore.
No, it's about jurisdictional power, constitutional law, and what happens when federal authority meets a local street corner.
That's a great way to put it.
So the mission for our discussion is really to look at this evolution objectively.
Yeah.
We're analyzing a timeline that goes from the Homeland Security Act of 2002 all the way to Operation Metro Surge in the Twin Cities in 2026. We're just looking at how the machinery works.
And I want to set the table here because we are going to talk about some heavy things. There are enforcement incidents, legal battles. It would be really easy to get emotional, but for this discussion, we're sticking to the facts.
Absolutely. The plan is to focus strictly on the legal precedents, the court filings, and the data we collect. To really understand the constitutional mechanisms at play, we have to strip away the rhetoric.
Okay, let's unpack this. I think the best place to start is with the agency's identity. Because when I hear ICE, I picture one thing. A uniform, a badge, deportation. I just assume it's one big force.
And that's a very common misconception.
Later reality
Yes, well, it's far more complex. The sources we have describe it as having a dual DNA.
Dual DNA.
Think of it this way. After 9/11, the government basically mashed two completely different functions into one agency.
Okay, two functions. Like what?
So on one side, you have HSI, Homeland Security Investigations.
HSI. To be honest, that just sounds like another name for the same thing.
Not at all. HSI is the detective squad. They function much more like the FBI or the DEA. Their job is transnational crime.
So things like money laundering, cybercrime.
Exactly. The data we collect shows their caseload is full of massive cybercrime rings, child exploitation networks, intellectual property theft. They're hunting sophisticated criminal organizations.
So these aren't the agents checking visas at an airport.
Not at all. And here's the crucial point. To do that job, to take down a trafficking ring, you need cooperation. HSI agents need to talk to local police. They need witnesses in immigrant communities to trust them.
Right. I can see where this is going. If I think you're going to deport my family, I'm not going to tell you about the counterfeit ring operating next door.
Precisely. And that brings us to the other half of the agency, ERO, Enforcement and Removal Operations. This is the civil administrative arm. They are the ones who handle detention and deportation. So while HSI is trying to build bridges to solve major crimes, ERO's function is, well, often seen as tearing them down.
So one half of the agency is trying to work with communities, and the other half is actively removing people from them. That must create some friction.
It's an internal conflict that has defined the agency for 2 decades. The sources highlight that HSI has actively tried to rebrand itself. They've tried to change their name, even just to separate their identity from ERO.
Wow, so they're basically saying, don't confuse us with the people at the next desk. But looking at the timeline, it seems like ERO, the enforcement side, is the one that's really grown recently.
That's accurate. By fiscal years 2025 and 2026, the data we collect shows a massive shift in resources toward ERO. But it wasn't just more people. It was a change in kind. The sources describe it as a militarization of ERO.
Militarization is a strong word. What does that actually mean?
It refers to equipment, training, tactics. We're talking about the widespread use of special response teams, or SRTs. These are units trained in urban warfare tactics, high-risk breaching.
Wait, urban warfare for immigration enforcement? I thought this was civil administrative law.
It is, and that's the core of the issue. The agency began using a level of force traditionally reserved for, say, a drug cartel raid, but applying it to civil immigration matters. The strategy shifted from targeting specific felons to broader deterrence operations.
So they have the gear and the training of a SWAT team, but they're enforcing civil law. Before we get to what happened on the streets, there's a legal piece here that I think is the real I know you don't know moment. The warrants.
Yes. This is critical, and it's almost universally misunderstood.
I'll admit I'm part of that public. To me, a warrant is a warrant. Someone with a badge shows up with a paper that says warrant. I assume they can come in.
And that's not necessarily true. You have to distinguish between a judicial warrant and an administrative warrant. A judicial warrant is what you see on TV. It's signed by a judge, a neutral magistrate. To get one, law enforcement has to prove probable cause. That warrant grants them the authority to enter a private home.
Right, so a judge, an outside party, has to sign off on it.
Correct. Now, contrast that with an administrative warrant. Often it's a Form I-200 or I-205. It looks official, has the seal and everything. But it is not signed by a judge. It's signed by an internal ICE official.
So they're signing their own permission slips.
You could see it that way. And historically, the law was clear. That document does not grant the authority to enter a private home without consent. The Fourth Amendment protects your home.
Okay, so that was the rule. What happened?
May 12, 2025. The sources point to a specific internal memo signed by Acting Director Todd Lyons. This memo reinterpreted the legal landscape.
Reinterpreted how?
It asserted that the Constitution and the Immigration and Nationality Act do not prohibit using these administrative warrants to enter homes for people with final removal orders.
So they just decided they didn't need a judge anymore. Is that legal?
Well, their argument was that the administrative process itself provided enough due process.
Yeah.
But it effectively bypassed judicial review. It cut the courts out of the loop.
And this legal shift is what led to more aggressive tactics.
It led directly to an increase in breaching operations in non-border areas. Agents were operating under new guidance from the top.
Which brings us to Operation Metro Surge. Late 2025, early 2026. Minneapolis and St. Paul. This wasn't just a few extra patrols, was it?
No, this is a massive deployment. The data we collect points to a force of 2,000 to 3,000 agents in the metro area. That included elite BORTAC units.
BORTAC.
The Border Patrol's tactical units. Think of it as the Border Patrol's version of a SWAT team.
And they were sent to a Midwestern city. What was the official reason?
The stated objective from DHS was to combat welfare fraud and gang violence. But the operational reality on the ground was different. And that's when the incident started to happen.
Let's talk about the first one. Renee Nicole Good, January 7th, 2026.
Yes. Renee Nicole Good was a 37-year-old U.S. citizen. She was shot and killed by agents while inside her vehicle.
I've seen the reports, and there's two completely different stories. DHS called her a domestic terrorist.
The official statement claims she attempted to ram agents with her vehicle, justifying the use of lethal force.
But the other evidence?
Well, the data we collect from independent forensic analysis and bystander video suggests she was maneuvering to flee containment, not ramming anyone. The video shows a chaotic scene with agents shouting. It suggests panic, not aggression.
And she's a U.S. citizen.
Correct. And immediately after the shooting, this major jurisdictional clash erupted. Federal prosecutors claimed exclusive jurisdiction and physically blocked state investigators from the scene.
They stopped the local police from investigating a homicide in their own state.
Yes. It prompted a lawsuit from the state attorney general, arguing for state sovereignty.
And while that's happening, it happens again, less than 3 weeks later. Alex Pretty.
Alex Pretty was a VA nurse, also a U.S. citizen. He was shot while filming agents with his phone.
With his phone. But the official report said he was armed and approaching.
Again, conflicting narratives. He did have a firearm, which he was licensed to carry. But video evidence reviewed by Reuters and CBS shows he was holding a phone when he was shot. A gun was removed from his waistband after he was on the ground.
So you have 2 U.S. citizens killed in less than a month.
And that shifted the whole conversation. It stopped being about immigration policy and became about civil liberties and police powers.
It leads to that huge question. Can a state arrest a federal agent?
And that is the constitutional crisis we're looking at. It's a fight between federal immunity and state sovereignty.
What's the federal argument? How can they claim immunity?
They rely on the supremacy clause of the Constitution. The argument is that for the federal government to function, its agents can't be arrested by local authorities for just doing their jobs. They call it absolute immunity.
Okay, I get that in principle. You don't want a local sheriff arresting an FBI agent for seizing evidence in a federal case. But there has to be a line?
And that's the counterargument. Legal scholars and the state point to a case from 1890 in Renegel. It established a test. Immunity only applies if the action was necessary and proper.
Necessary and proper. That seems to be the entire debate.
It is. The state of Minnesota argues that the force used was not necessary or proper, and therefore immunity shouldn't apply.
But the feds say they get to decide what's necessary. And while the criminal fight happens, what about the families? Can they sue?
That's where it gets even harder. The legal path for suing federal agents, known as a Bivens remedy, has been narrowed significantly by the Supreme Court. The data we collect shows it's become nearly impossible.
So you can't really arrest them and you can't really sue them.
It leaves victims in a legal vacuum, and that has had a huge political impact. The sources note that public support for abolishing ICE jumped from just 8% in 2025 to 46% in January 2026. It wasn't about ideology, it was about accountability.
It's a lot to take in. So let's make this practical. Given all of this, the memos, the immunity claims, what does the data we collect say a person should actually do? If agents knock on your door tonight, what are the rules of engagement?
The sources outline a kind of survival guide, and these rights apply to everyone, citizen or not. It's all based on the Constitution.
Okay, step one.
The Fifth Amendment, the right to remain silent. Do not answer questions about where you were born or your immigration status. You just say, I choose to remain silent.
What if they ask to look around?
That's the Fourth Amendment. You have the right to refuse searches. You say clearly, I do not consent to a search. If you say, okay, you've given up that right.
And the big one, the door. What do I do when they're knocking?
Do not open the door.
Not even a crack.
Not even a crack. Speak through the closed door. Ask them to pass the warrant under the door or hold it to a window.
And I'm looking for a judge's signature.
That's it. You're looking for a judicial warrant. If it's signed by an ICE official, it's an administrative warrant, and you state, this is not a judicial warrant. I do not consent to entry.
So you stand your ground based on the Fourth Amendment, despite that 2025 memo.
That is the legal guidance provided. The sources also mention red cards.
What are those?
They're pre-printed cards that state your rights for you. In a stressful situation, it's easy to forget what to say. You can just slide the card under the door. It says you're remaining silent and not consenting to a search.
A cheat sheet for your constitutional rights.
Yeah.
That's something. So where does this leave us?
I think we're at a constitutional crossroads. The definitions of national security, federal power, and individual liberty are all being redefined right now.
This feels bigger than just one agency or one policy.
It is. The debate is really about the scope of executive power. Can a memo override the Fourth Amendment? Can federal agents operate with total immunity from local law? The outcome of these legal battles in Minnesota will set precedents for the entire country for decades.
It's a sobering reminder that all those, boring legal details, warrants, clauses, jurisdiction, are actually the only thing standing between citizens and unchecked power.
That's a very good way of putting it. Understanding these mechanisms is the first step.
Thanks for tuning into this episode. If you enjoyed our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and turn on the notification bell.